Hi, welcome to Chad's Silversmithing. First off, I'd like to thank you for watching this video, and if you find it useful, would you mind liking the video? If you find that you'd like to see more of this kind of content, would you go ahead and subscribe to the channel? I'd love to have you as a subscriber. So, today's topic is going to be some cute little earrings that I've made over the years, where I'm using circular cabochons as the center stones, and then I'm making concentric circles around them. So I find that it's a pretty good seller, and you can make different modifications to them to change the style a little bit, and so they're kind of versatile earring styles that sell pretty well. So let's get started. All right, for the materials we need, we'll need some bezel. I'm going to use 3/16 inch fine silver bezel. I picked out a couple of nice little Charoite cabochons. Charoite comes from Russia. It's kind of a pretty stone. I'll need some sterling silver sheet for the back. I'm going to use 26 gauge because it doesn't have to be a structurally strong kind of area. A little bit of 20 gauge for the ear wires, and then I think I've used 18 gauge before for this, and 14 gauge. I actually made some 16 gauge to kind of cut the split the difference between those two for this particular pair. It'll be a little bit stronger than 18, which is kind of flimsy, and 14 is kind of clunky, so somewhere in between sometimes is right where I want to be. So first off, we're going to go ahead and make the bezels for the stones. So let's get going on that. Just need to put a bottom on these guys. So one of the things I found when I was a beginner was that bezels were extremely frustrating. There's a lot of different ways to mess up bezels. One, you can cut the length significantly wrong, so if it's too big you have to cut it down again and resolder it. And when you're new at things, that's a little bit frustrating. When you're filing it down the bottom, you can cut a little too deep and put a hole in the bottom of your bezel. There's all sorts of ways that it can go wrong, so I found them frustrating. The good thing is, after about making probably 30 bezels, that's usually what I tell people, is about after you've done about 30 bezels, it becomes pretty routine, and then you can make them pretty quickly and without too many problems usually. So, all right, now I just got to solder these guys together. Got a few pieces of solder here, so we'll flux them. When you solder these in, they just need to be touching the sides and the bottom. They don't have to lean or anything like that. To make the circles, I need to make 4 circles. I'm going to make 2 that are, I'm trying to do it in thirds, kind of like if this is 1/3 the size, the next one would be a third up, and then the next one would be another third for the full size. So I'm going to use some of these dapping punches to try and get some circles that I like size-wise. They're always going to, when you wrap them around something like this, they're always going to spring back a little bit, so it's going to be slightly bigger than the circles that I make. Because once you release off of here, see, now it's a little bit looser because it springs back a little bit. So let's see about that size. Well, I like that size pretty well. That's all right. Okay. So I think I can get a couple of them off of there. So let's. Spend a little time soldering and making those even in a bit for this. The reason this wire is black is because I pulled it through the draw plate a couple of times. If you want to see how to use a draw plate, I'll try and put a link up here for you to view my draw plate video, but I needed some wire that was between 14 and 18, so I pulled some thicker wire into some 16 gauge. So I would have some to use for today. So let me explain again. I don't think I explained fully. When you pull something through the draw plate, it gets brittle because it's being compressed into a smaller space, and so it gets work hardened really badly. And as you pull it through the draw plate, it gets harder and harder. So you have to go back and heat it to the point where it softens the metal up again. It's called annealing. And you'll see, if you watch that video on using the draw plate, it talks a little bit about that too. So, all right. So I'm going to clean up these ends of these rings here. Where I hook these together, I want to round them out, make sure they're nice and round. Next, they probably have some waviness in this dimension, so I'm going to spend a little time getting them to sit flat on the table here. So I'm probably going to do them just like this. There's likely plenty of solder there in order to solder this all together already, just from soldering those rings together. So, like I said, I think I'm going to make them like that. I don't think I got my 1/3, 2/3, 3/3 proportion, but that's okay. I think they're still attractive like that. Fun things you could do if you wanted to You don't have to make them all lined up in the same way. You could solder them together like this. You don't have them hang, you know, like almost like eyeballs looking in different cockeyed directions. But you know, there's all sorts of variations you could do here. You do them, you know, on the sides like this, and then hang them from the top. That might be kind of cool. I kind of like that one. I might do that. Just put them like that, and then put the jump ring on the top here. I think I'm going to do that. That's my favorite idea so far. So first, let's take advantage of the solder joints where they exist. Just use those to solder them together. If you have too much solder in here, it could wick along the thing too far where the two wires come together. So I find it's best to try and use minimal solder on this particular one. And like I said, we're going to try and get it to do it without adding any. Which it might do, but if I need to, I have some more right there that I can add. Try and get those pretty symmetrical here. I have sort of a symmetry problem. I have trouble making things asymmetrical. It bothers my sense of what's right and wrong. So I have to constantly push myself away from making everything, you know, perfectly symmetrical. Here's a piece of advice that I give people sometimes. The solder joint that we have on the side of the bezel, oftentimes people try and put it wherever the other solder joints are, like over here. Being a spot that usually needs a little bit more cleanup with the Dremel or with the polishing wheel than the rest of it, putting it in a spot where it's easier to reach on the polishing wheel is sometimes a better idea. So if you pack it over here where there's a lot of cleanup needed already, it might make it harder. So maybe over here or over here where it's easier to reach. I think I put mine kind of facing up there. This one needs a little more solder. Okay, I have here some 20 gauge wire that I've wrapped around a piece of 14 gauge round wire to make some very small jump rings. And these are what I use for most of my earrings to connect the ear wires to. Pretty small for my clunky fingers. Try and get these about the same spot. I'm going to just make a mark. Whenever you're soldering with things that have disparate masses, this little tiny ring versus this big earring here, most of the heat needs to go to the bigger piece first because it takes longer for that piece to reach the soldering temperature, whereas the little piece will reach it very quickly. So you kind of avoid that one until the very end because it takes almost no time for that one to heat up to that point. So I add a little bit more solder on there. Sometimes it'll just jump right on there after you solder the ring together. Sometimes it doesn't. This one I put quite a bit of solder on originally on the ring. Let's see how it works. That one jumped over there. Okay, so those are done. I'm going to throw them in the pickle for a little while, and then I'll clean them up. And I'll show you the final product after we set the stones. So I just fished them out of the pickle and cleaned them up a bit. I did a little pre-polishing with the Dremel, and I think I'm going to file this just a skosh on the top. These are particularly deep stones, so I don't suspect I'm going to need more than maybe one piece of backing for each of these. We shall find out. So this is 20 gauge half hard, which is what I generally use for making French hooks or French wires or ear wires or whatever you like to call them. Got a couple pieces of these. Make a little loop about 3/4 of an inch in. If you want to see the full tutorial on making French wires, look up here and I'll try and put a link up there. generally put these on before I polish so that I have a little bit more to hold on to. Sometimes earrings are small, and when you're wearing leather gloves while you're polishing, it's hard to hold on to little tiny things. So if you have a little piece of wire that's hanging off, that gives you just that much more to hold on to. And then after we're done polishing, then I shape them the rest of the way into French wires. Okay, so I'll polish these and then I'll show you the final product. Finished polishing, and here's the final product. I think they came out pretty cool. I've never made this particular variation before. I usually have had the stone at the top or at the bottom, but I really like it. So that's one style of these sorts of earrings, but there's many variations you could do. All right, that was the concentric circle earring video. As always, thanks for watching. I appreciate you continual viewers, and if you enjoyed it, please like the video. That helps out a great deal, and share it with others who might like it. And if you like this kind of content, subscribe to the channel. I really appreciate it if you would. So thanks for watching again. Happy silversmithing. Take care.